Welcome to Life Stories, where we bring you real tales of love, betrayal, and the unexpected twists life throws our way. Today's story is one that will keep you on the edge of your seat. As a family's peaceful life unravels at a seemingly innocent dinner, what happens when secrets are exposed and the truth comes to light? This is a story of deceit, heartache, and ultimately, redemption. Stick with us to hear how one woman's life was turned upside down by betrayal, and how the truth changed everything. Please subscribe to our channel to begin today's story. My name is Jessica, and for the past 15 years, I've been happily married to Tom, the love of my life. We have built a life together, raised two beautiful children, a set of 12-year-old twins, Ethan and Emma. They've been the light of our lives, a reflection of everything good we've worked so hard to create. Or, at least, that's what we all believed. Things were always peaceful, calm, and as normal as any family's life could be. Until that one day 3 months ago when Tom's sister, Rachel, returned to the city after living abroad for over a decade. Rachel had left so many years ago, chasing dreams in Europe, and the arrival of her return should have been a happy occasion. We expected it to be a time for family to reconnect, mend any fractured bonds, and celebrate the joy of having her back after all this time. But from the moment she walked through the door, I felt something I couldn't quite put my finger on. When Rachel and I saw each other for the first time after so many years, it was awkward. There was no warm embrace, no genuine excitement in her eyes. Instead, she pulled me into a stiff hug, her arms barely wrapping around me as if she was doing it out of obligation. The hug felt forced, and there was a hesitation in her voice that didn't sit right with me. "Oh, Jessica," she said, too enthusiastically for comfort, her smile never reaching her eyes. "The kids have grown so much. They really look," she trailed off, clearly lost for words. The oddness of that moment stayed with me, but I pushed it aside, convincing myself it was simply the result of years apart. Maybe it was just the awkwardness of time and distance that had created this invisible barrier between us. Yet, as the days went on, I began to notice more and more of these subtle, unsettling things, small comments that seemed out of place. Whenever Rachel would look at the twins, there would always be some remark about how they looked. Once, while we were sitting down for coffee, she absent-mindedly stirred her mug and said, "It's odd, you know, I don't really see any of Tom in them. Who do you think they take after?" I felt my blood begin to boil at that comment, though I tried to hide it. "My father," I snapped, maybe a little sharper than I meant to. I couldn't help it. The twins had inherited my father's strong jawline and deep-set eyes. It wasn't as if Tom had nothing to do with their appearance. Still, Rachel hummed in response, her lips curling into a half-smile. "If you say so," she said, but her tone wasn't convinced. I could tell she was pushing me, testing the waters, but I couldn't understand why. That evening, I was making dinner when I walked into the bedroom to find Rachel snooping around. She froze when she saw me in the doorway, her eyes wide. "Oh, I was just looking for the bathroom," she said quickly, clearly startled. "But the bathroom is at the other end of the hall, so I didn't buy it." "Right," I said, keeping my voice flat. "You know that, right?" She laughed nervously, but her eyes kept scanning the room. "You have a lot of old pictures here," she remarked, her gaze lingering on the photographs of our family, moments I'd kept for the memories. "I like to keep memories alive," I replied, my voice steady, though there was a creeping sense of discomfort settling in my stomach. "Memories of everyone?" she asked, her voice laced with something I couldn't place. Was it curiosity? Or something else? The way she spoke was almost accusatory, like she was searching for something I wasn't aware of. The unease that had been building in me for weeks finally hit its peak. I tried to ignore it, brushing it off, but a chill ran down my spine. Later that night, after the kids were in bed, I sat down with Tom, feeling that same gnawing discomfort deep inside. I turned to him, keeping my voice low. "Tom, I think your sister is looking for something," I said carefully, though my words felt heavy. He looked at me, his brows furrowed in confusion. What could she be looking for? He asked. Clearly puzzled. I don't know, I admitted, shaking my head. But the way she talks about the kids. The questions about the past. It's off. Tom sighed, leaning back in his chair. Rachel's always been intense, especially after Dad passed. He left her the majority of his estate. And it left a bitterness in her. I think, he explained, rubbing his temples. But it's different now that she's back. She's changed. I hadn't fully grasped what Tom was saying at the time. But looking back, I realize how right he was. There was something off about Rachel's behavior, a sense of entitlement. A sharpness that I hadn't remembered from when we were younger. And so, life continued for a while, with Rachel's strange comments and behavior gradually becoming harder to ignore. What was meant to be a joyful reunion felt more like a slow-burning fuse waiting to explode. Little did I know, the real storm was just beginning. The tension had been simmering for weeks. But it reached a boiling point during what should have been just another typical family dinner. Tom, the twins, Rachel, his mother, and I gathered around the table, ready to enjoy a warm meal together. Elena, Tom's mother, had made her famous homemade pasta. And we were all catching up on the past month. It was supposed to be an evening of comfort and familiarity. Instead, it was an evening that changed everything. Rachel was acting strangely again, fidgeting with her food and glancing at the others with an unsettling intensity. She was agitated, as though she had something on her mind that she could no longer keep bottled up. The rest of us were talking, laughing, enjoying the food, but Rachel was distant. Her mind clearly elsewhere. I could feel the air growing thicker with every passing minute. Suddenly, out of nowhere, Rachel broke the silence. Do you all remember when Tom and Jessica first started dating? She asked. Her voice cutting through the hum of conversation like a sharp blade. She seemed to be staring at me, and I instinctively felt my heart tighten. Jessica used to work at that little bar near the university. What was it called again? The Crest? I swallowed hard, my stomach flipping at the mention of that bar. I had always tried to push that part of our past into the background. But Rachel wasn't done. The Crest? I repeated, my voice tight as I felt a lump form in my throat. That was where Tom and I met. Back in our college days. It was where everything had started. But why was Rachel bringing it up now? After all these years? Yes. The Crest, Rachel said, nodding slowly, her tone oddly light, almost too casual. Do you remember Anthony, the bartender? You know, the one who always gave us the best deals. A cold shiver ran through me. I knew exactly where this conversation was heading. And I wasn't sure I wanted to go down that path. Vaguely, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. The room had fallen silent now. And the twins, who had been quietly eating, looked up at us. Their expressions confused, their forks suspended mid-air. Rachel didn't seem to notice the shift in the atmosphere. She pressed on, her smile tight and knowing. Come on, Jessica, you remember him better than that. Especially that month when Tom was away on his exchange program in New York. I froze. My heart began to pound in my chest. And I could feel the eyes of the family on me. The tension in the room thickened with every word Rachel spoke. I knew what she was trying to do. The room was beginning to understand too. And their unease was palpable. Do you remember? Rachel repeated, her voice far too light. As though she were recounting an old story. One that had no consequence. It's funny how certain coincidences happen. Don't you think? Tom turned to look at me. His brow furrowed in confusion. He wasn't sure what Rachel was implying. And I wasn't sure how much I could say without causing a scene. What is she talking about? Tom asked, glancing between me and Rachel. Nothing, I said quickly, forcing a smile. Rachel's just trying to stir up drama. But Rachel wasn't finished. She stood up abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. Drama? She asked, her voice rising. I call it hiding the truth for 12 years. I felt my body tense as she reached into her bag. Pulling out her phone, she typed something rapidly, her fingers moving with a strange sense of urgency. Want to see something interesting? She asked, her voice almost mocking now. I found Anthony on Facebook. It's amazing how much he looks like. Before she could finish, I cut her off. My voice came out sharp, cutting through her words like a blade. Enough, Rachel, I said firmly, trying to keep the growing panic inside me from spilling out. But Rachel was relentless. She smirked, looking directly at Tom, and her voice dropped into a mocking tone. Tom, you're not the father of the twins, she declared, her words striking like lightning. Jessica cheated on you with Anthony while you were in New York. The room fell silent. The twins' eyes locked on me, their faces filled with confusion and hurt. Alina's hand flew to her mouth, stifling a sob. Tom just stared at me, his face frozen in shock. In that moment, everything changed. My entire world, the life we had built together, the family we had created, it all came crashing down around us. My heart raced, but strangely, my mind was curiously calm, as if it were preparing itself for whatever was to come. I stood up slowly, the weight of the situation hanging heavily in the air. The silence was suffocating, and I locked eyes with Rachel. Are you finished? I asked, my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside me. Rachel tilted her head, her smirk wide and triumphant. The truth hurts, doesn't it? She said with satisfaction. I nodded slowly, reaching for my purse, my fingers brushing against the cool leather. I knew in that moment that it was time to fight back. To expose the lies for what they were. Funny you should bring up the truth, Rachel, I said, keeping my voice controlled. There's something you should know. The room's attention shifted to me, sensing the change in the air. And as I pulled out an envelope from my purse, I could feel Rachel's smile falter. She wasn't expecting this. No one was. The real battle was about to begin. The room felt charged, the weight of Rachel's accusation hanging in the air. She stood there, her smirk fading as I pulled out the envelope. I could feel the eyes of everyone on me, Tom, Elena, the twins, each of them waiting for what would happen next. It was as if time had stopped, and the world around us was holding its breath. Rachel's eyes narrowed, her voice shaky as she tried to regain control of the situation. What is that? She demanded, her usual confidence replaced by a flicker of fear. What are you doing, Jessica? Funny you should ask, I said, keeping my voice calm but firm. Remember when you started making all those comments about the kids? I paused for a moment, looking at the twins, their innocent faces filled with confusion and hurt. 3 months ago, when you came back and started questioning their appearance, I decided to take precautions. I watched as Rachel's face drained of color. Her confident stance faltered, and I knew I had her on the defensive. I pulled out the first document and placed it on the table between us, carefully unfolding it. When I took the kids to their medical checkups last month, I did something else, something that, apparently, you've been trying to ignore. I took a deep breath before continuing. I had DNA tests done on the twins, I said, my voice unwavering. The silence in the room was deafening. The twins shifted uncomfortably in their seats, glancing between me and Rachel, not understanding what was happening. Rachel looked at the documents in disbelief. You're lying, she whispered, her voice barely audible, but I could hear the panic creeping in. Why would you lie about something like this? Why would I lie, Rachel? I replied, my tone sharp but measured. After all, according to you, I had something to hide. Didn't I? As Rachel stood frozen, the reality of what was happening finally sinking in, I pulled out more documents from the envelope. And this is particularly interesting, I said, keeping my voice even. Remember Anthony, Rachel? I could see her flinch at the name, and I felt a rush of satisfaction. He certainly remembers you. Rachel's face twisted, her composure cracking. She started to panic, her hands trembling as she backed away from the table, clearly trying to avoid the truth. What are you talking about? She demanded, her voice rising with anger and fear. I contacted him, I said, my words coming out steady. And he helped me understand why you've been so obsessed with pushing this false narrative about the paternity of the kids. He told me everything about your relationship in college, about the pregnancy, and about the money you gave him to handle it. Elena gasped, her eyes wide with shock as she looked between me and Rachel. What is she saying? This isn't true, she cried out, her voice filled with disbelief. Rachel tried to argue, but the words didn't come. The tears in her eyes betrayed the depth of the situation, and I could see her slipping further and further into panic. I also know about the threats you made to Anthony 5 years ago. When your father was preparing his will, I continued, my voice calm, but there was a fire behind it. You threatened him, told him that if he ever revealed the truth about you, you would ruin his marriage. You made sure no one would know. Tom had been quiet up until this moment. His face was unreadable, but I could see the shock in his eyes. He turned slowly to Rachel, his voice thick with disbelief. Is this true? He asked. His words filled with a pain I couldn't even begin to understand. No, Rachel stammered, but there was no conviction in her voice. She looked around at all of us, her expression pleading, her face pale and worn. She had been caught, and she knew it. I didn't give her a chance to explain, because there was nothing to explain. I also found something else. Rachel, I said, pulling out a video from my phone. I clicked the play button, and the image on the screen flickered to life. It was a recording from the security camera I had installed in our bedroom weeks ago. Just in case Rachel's strange behavior continued, the video showed her rummaging through our things, speaking urgently into the phone, clearly frantic. I need to find something, she was saying in the video. Anything that proves those kids aren't Tom's. Dad changed his will before he died. If Tom has legitimate heirs, half of everything goes to them when they turn 18. I can't let that happen. Rachel's face turned ashen as the video played, the truth unraveling in front of everyone. The silence in the room was suffocating. Tom's face hardened into an expression I had never seen before. He stared at Rachel, his disbelief slowly turning into a raw, intense anger. You didn't think anyone would uncover your lies, did you? I said softly, my words cutting through the thick silence. This is the truth, Rachel, the truth you've tried so desperately to hide. Rachel crumbled before our eyes. Her smug expression was completely gone, replaced by a broken look of guilt and fear. She collapsed into her chair, sobbing uncontrollably, her body racked with shame. I'm sorry, she whispered between her sobs. I'm so sorry. But her apology came too late. The damage had been done. The truth had come to light, and there was no going back. Tom stood up, his face hardening with a coldness that made the room seem even quieter. I think it's time for you to leave, Rachel, he said, his voice final. Rachel's eyes filled with desperation. Michael, please, she pleaded, but her voice was drowned out by Tom's resolve. No, Rachel, Tom said, his tone unyielding. We'll talk when, and if, I can ever understand why you did this. The days following that fateful dinner were a blur of emotions and revelations. But one thing was clear, our family, our foundation, had been shaken to its core. And as for Rachel, the consequences of her actions were only just beginning. The following months were a whirlwind of emotional upheaval, revelations, and difficult decisions. Rachel's confession was only the beginning, and the fallout from her actions continued to ripple through our lives. As promised, she returned the money she had stolen from the family, publicly confessed to her wrongdoings, and sought therapy to address the deep-rooted issues that had driven her actions. While her attempts at redemption were far from perfect, she was starting to take responsibility for the damage she had caused. For Tom and me, the healing process was slow but steady. Our marriage, once shaken to its core, grew even stronger as we faced these challenges together. The trust that had been broken was difficult to repair, but our love for each other, and for our children, was an unshakable foundation that allowed us to move forward. The twins, though deeply hurt by their aunt's actions, found it in their hearts to forgive her. They were young, but they understood that people make mistakes, and that forgiveness, though painful, is a part of growing up. A year after everything unfolded, I received a letter from Rachel. It was from the rehabilitation center where she had checked herself in. She wrote about her regret, her slow journey toward becoming a better person, and her gratitude for the truth coming to light. "Thank you for exposing my lies," she wrote. "That night, you saved me from myself." Reading those words, I realized something profound. Family is not just about blood. It's about truth, love, and forgiveness. We had been through the storm, and while the scars may never fully heal, they were part of our story now. And as we moved forward, stronger and more united than ever, I knew that the truth always finds its way into the light, no matter how dark the path may seem. If you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe to our channel for more life stories.